Do you have fears that are holding you back from dating? The truth of the matter is, it can be pretty scary. It can be scary to get back out there. Thank you so much for joining us again on Second Act TV. Want to welcome back Sandy Weiner, the dating coach, relationship expert, communication expert, and the author of Love at Last, sitting right there behind me. Sandy, thanks so much for joining us again.
So good to be back, Silka.
Well, we have an important topic today because, as we talk about finding love and looking for love and all the dating tips and tricks and what we need to know, the truth of the matter is it can be pretty scary. It can be scary to get back out there. And there are real fears, dating fears that we experience.
Oh my God. One of the most common things I hear from people who are interested in coaching is I'm petrified to get out there again. I haven't dated in 25 years. Or my experiences have been terrible. My heart has been broken. There's so many reasons why it's scary. It's natural to have fears, but some of the fears can really hold you back. And that's why I wanted to talk about them.
Well, let's talk about the top five, as you call it here. So the top five dating fears. Number one, fear of rejection.
The most common fear of
Yeah.
all, I think. And I think we're all afraid of rejection, no matter whether it's dating or a job interview or a friend. We don't want to be turned down. We don't want to be considered unlikable or unattractive. And often when we go out to date again, that really is first and foremost on our minds, that we're gonna go on a date and they're not gonna like the way we look or sound or what we do or what our body's like or whatever it is.
What's interesting about the whole rejection thing, and we've talked about that before. I mean, rejection is a huge topic. It really is the way that we frame it. If we can learn to reframe how we think about rejection. Now, I know that's totally easier said than done, but rejection really is up here versus what's going on out there, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's also there's a thick skin that you can develop as you start dating more. And that's why you have to get out there. So if you're so afraid of rejection and it stops you from dating, then you're never going to develop that thick skin to be able to deal with it, to be able to realize it's just not a good match. There are other people out there. There's tons of people. We just don't realize it. We think, oh my God, finally felt a connection with somebody and they don't want me. And it could be for a million different reasons, right? There could be just bad timing. They could be sick. They could be busy. Who knows? Who cares? But the more you do it and the more you practice it and the more you tell yourself, this is just not the right fit, I'm going to move on. And don't waste your time and energy trying to figure out the why, because that's what makes us crazy.
That's a great point. Well, and then number two here, what kind of goes hand in hand, the fear of not being good enough. That's interesting, especially I think at our age that comes up more and more.
I think we all have that fear too. I mean, I think that there's some part of us that we feel is a bit of an imposter, or we don't measure up. We think that we have to be something that we're not. And again, this is really about getting clear with who you are authentically and showing up that way. And it's easier said than done, but one of the beautiful parts of coaching that I love the most is helping people really value their uniqueness. And we spend so much of our life trying to compare ourselves to other people and trying to be something that we're not to fit in. And so much of dating advice is about that. Just try to fake it and be something you're not, and suppress all your feelings until you're really locked down in a relationship, which is a terrible thing to do. So, it's about authenticity. It's about getting comfortable with who you are. It's about having your own standards of who somebody else is.
Well, what's interesting about all these 5 points, I know that in a lot of your writing and in your coaching, you have a large, just audience, a large clientele, if you will, of women. However, this is totally applicable to men as well. And I'm wondering, especially with the fear of not being good enough, Do you think that men have that even worse than women? Do you have an opinion on that?
We probably are equal in our
Yeah.
feeling of not good enough. And I do coach some men, and often I think men often will be less critical of their bodies because I think the body image stuff has been so much in the media for women having to have these perfect bodies, but men have their own issues around
Hmm.
body image and the size of their members. I don't know if we're allowed to say other words on this on
We
this
are
show.
lately. Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
And which is
But yeah,
ridiculous. We've actually done shows on that. That's why it's so interesting. This whole good enough.
yeah, and
It
performance
yeah. Hmm.
anxiety. I mean, and men and women have these same insecurities. So much of it is, look at the belief that you have
Hmm.
and ask yourself where that belief came from. Often
Hmm.
it comes from the media or it comes from childhood. It comes from somebody that you dated who said something horrible to you and you carried it with you. We're so much more likely to take the negative thoughts and we're like focused on the negative bias
Hmm.
than the positive. So ask yourself if these beliefs are true. We need to interrogate the truth of our negative beliefs. And once we really start to look at them with a magnifying glass, is this really true?
Yeah.
100% true? Without a
Hmm.
doubt true? And then ask yourself who you become when you don't believe that it's true. And that's how we start to become the person we're meant to be.
Well, I look forward to the comments and see what our men think about this. For some reason, that really hit me strongly when I read your article. I said, "Well, this is." I wonder how men feel about this, especially the
Yeah.
number three. I think we know the answer, but the fear of vulnerability. And I'm thinking, as a woman, do we have a fear of vulnerability? What exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah, sharing how we feel when somebody hurts our feelings, even if they come late on a date or any of
Mm-hmm.
those things can feel really vulnerable. Asking somebody what they're looking for early on is vulnerable, especially
Mm-hmm.
if you're really attracted. I think that we all have guards up because, again, we've been hurt. So we have this fear of rejection. So if we're fearing rejection, then we're going to stay safe and we're not going to share a lot of what's really going to connect us. I have a client who used to just share facts all the time, just facts. I went here and
Mm.
then I went there and
Oh,
then I did
yeah.
this and then I did that. That's not vulnerable. That's just a list and it's not engaging. Vulnerability is saying one of my favorite trips was to Italy. And the reason I loved it so much is because the art was so colorful and so bright and it just made me so happy.
Mm.
And now I'm beginning to feel something, right? And the other person can say, "Oh yeah, I also went to Italy, and what
Mm-hmm.
I loved the most was going to the churches. The churches were so vast, and I felt so small and
Mm.
so humbled." Right now, we're using vulnerability, but not sharing our entire life story.
Mm-hmm.
Vulnerability is not sharing your deep, dark past.
Mm-hmm.
It's not talking about how you hate your mother or your ex-husband or
Mm.
wife. That's not vulnerability, that's oversharing.
Oh.
And so we want to be vulnerable enough to create some intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, we have to just take that baby step using some feeling words. I liked
Mm-hmm.
it because just adding that word because can open up a whole conversation and make
Mm-hmm.
you feel connected to that person.
Yeah, I know I read somewhere in all the articles and stuff that I read that one of the things that men really want in a woman is a vulnerable woman. And I've always, for some reason, thought, well, of course, we're vulnerable. It's the other way around. So again, I'm interested in the comments. I think these things are really important that we think about that before we get back out there.
And the opposite of vulnerability, by the way, is shame. And
Mm.
shame is in the dark, vulnerability is
Hmm.
in the light. And so if we have shame, and this is probably more common with men, that men are shamed out of a lot of things when they're younger. Women are more socialized to be vulnerable and open. And if we're afraid to tell people things about ourselves because of shame, then we're never going to get close to them. So I think it's important to understand vulnerability better. We're not giving a whole section on vulnerability. This is just a brief topic here, but it is such an important one.
Fear of commitment, number four. Again, I really associate that more with guys. It's the way we've been told. But I suppose women are too. I don't know why I'm analyzing this so much. Fear of commitment. Like, did I have a fear of commitment? I don't think I did. It's an interesting point.
There are a lot of people who do, and a lot of people don't admit that they're afraid.
Mm,
It's like be careful what you wish for. You know, you finally get what you want, and now it's pretty scary because you're going to have to actually have a full-blown relationship where you have vulnerability and you have all those things. And what if they break my heart? So they
hmm
may be great for the first 5 or 6 dates, and then it gets real and they start to shut down. That happens a lot with both men and women. I've had both. There are also people who fake that they want a commitment
mm,
because they don't want to get hurt. So they'll say, "Yeah, I don't really know what I want," or I'm cool, whatever. And that's not really true. And so that could come from fear of commitment or fear of actually being vulnerable and saying what you want. This is important. If you're afraid of commitment, if you are afraid to fully invest in a relationship because of past experiences, it's really important to work with somebody like me or a therapist to
hmm
really work this through so that you can learn to trust and open up again.
Well, one of the big topics too that we've had on Second Act, and you and I will be talking about that, is really, are you ready to date again? And maybe, like, I felt like when I started again, this was 12 years or 13 years ago now. Uh, I think I really was. So that fear of commitment. I mean, to me, that's what I was looking for, a relationship. So I'm wondering if that runs deeper in that sense. Is that, are you ready? If you have a fear of commitment, are you really ready to date? Does that make sense at all?
You can be ready to date, and then when it gets real, you could be afraid.
Okay.
So when I first started dating after my divorce, I
Mm-hmm.
felt totally ready because I had
Mm-hmm.
felt alone in the relationship for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I waited 2 years into the divorce to start dating. So I wasn't exclusive with anyone, but I dated a guy. And after a couple of dates, I said, it's not going to work out. And he goes, "Oh, I knew I shouldn't have dated you. You just started dating." And it had nothing to
Uh,
do with the fact that I just started dating. It wasn't a good
mm-hmm.
fit. But we do change a lot over time. So the beginning of dating after divorce or loss, or if you haven't dated for a long time, you can change who you want to date.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we're just dating to practice and have an experience. And sometimes we want commitment. Sometimes we think we want commitment, but we realize we just want experiences. So it's just important to try and get clear with yourself. That's not a fear of commitment. That's more, I'm not ready for commitment. There's a difference.
A little bit off track, but if somebody says that they're not looking for a relationship or ready for a relationship, do you think that's essentially just a red flag that they're not? I mean, it's not going to be a match.
It depends on what you want. And so if they say, "I don't want a relationship," they might
Mm-hmm.
also be protecting themselves because of fear of commitment, but they might be in that stage where they travel a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I know someone who recently met a guy who he's always on the road.
Mm-hmm.
She slept with him anyway because he was cute. but she knew going in that he was not going to be available,
Mm-hmm.
and she just decided to go for it. Now, if you attach quickly to people and you're doing that, then you're going to get hurt. And so you have to know what you're doing. If
Mm-hmm.
somebody's so clear with you, like, "I'm just not ready,"
Mm-hmm.
you should take them seriously. And
Yes.
if you're in the same position, that's fine. But if you're
Mm-hmm.
not, don't do it.
Yeah, well, and we'll talk about that some more too. The old situationship. So look for that segment. Sandy, finally here, and I didn't quite understand this, so I'm interested to hear your answer. The fear of being alone. How does that factor into the dating
Yeah.
equation?
So if you're afraid of being alone, a lot of times people end up single without a partner because they're afraid that they're going to be alone if they date. So it's like worse to be
Okay.
dating or they date just to have somebody to take up space. So either one. A lot of times the fear of being alone gets you out there dating, but it gets you out there dating the wrong people. So you're not dating selectively. And so it's a different kind of fear. It's not going to stop you from dating it, but it what might stop you from dating the right person.
The right person. You're just dating for the sake of dating. So yeah,
Yeah.
okay, all right. Yeah, I associate that differently. Well, it's an interesting topic, and certainly one that we need to think about. Do you have fears that are holding you back from dating? And if you don't, and if you don't want to date, that's okay too. But if you want to find someone, if you want that relationship, if you want that right person, then yeah, is something holding you back that you're fearful of? So, good, really good points. Sandy, is there anything else that you want to add before we sign off on this?
I think dating is like the lottery. You got to be in it
Mhm.
to win it. And
Yeah.
so if you want to find a partner and you don't date, you're never going to find somebody. And I really believe if it's not a very deep-seated fear, if it's a deep-seated fear, go get help. And even if you're getting help, get out there and date as soon as you can, because the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it, the more confident you'll be, and the more you'll feel in control of the situation instead of feeling like, oh, I hope I'm picked and I hope I don't get rejected and all those other things.
Hmm.
They really do start to wane the more you get out there and date. So I just encourage people who are really hesitant to stop overthinking it, just get out there and date, practice, learn from every date, and go on your last first date.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and I guess that you're normal. I mean, these fears are really normal, especially the first one, the fear of rejection, and it's something that's going to happen. I think maybe that's what I want to add before we sign off, is that almost expect it without being negative, because that is something that if that's holding you back, you're likely to experience it, and then don't give up if it does, because it's just something that's there. And I know that's difficult, but I think if you hear somebody say that, like, I think that would have helped me. You're just, yeah, this is going to happen. This is not you. It's just something that's going to happen. So anyway, enough of my opinion. Sandy, I will link to all of your information as usual. If you want to coach with Sandy directly, we have a link in the show notes, as well as to her book right there. It's a very, well, it's a book that really gives you back hope that you will find love or can find love later in life. So, Sandy, thank you again for all of your time, and I look forward to our next discussion on Second Act TV.